Welcome, everybody, to episode number 2 of Tips from My Podcast. Tips from My Garage Podcast. My name is Lisiate Tonga. For those of you who don't know me, I am a recovering addict. I am an author. I am a father of 2 beautiful boys. I am a husband to a beautiful wife, and I live in Melbourne, Australia. And I just wanted to quickly give you a rundown on the things that I want to talk about today. But before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to Tony Overbay, who is a good friend of mine, and also I would call him one of my mentors. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He lives in Arizona now, but he's got his own businesses and his own podcast, one of which is called The Virtual Couch. And that's what I am rocking today is a jacket from Tony Overbay, which has got his Virtual Couch podcast logo on it. So just want to give a quick shout out to Tony. Thanks for the jacket. It has kept me warm through these winter nights, and I look forward to speaking to you and having you soon on my podcast, if that could be at all possible, arranged down the track. So I want to quickly cover or give you just a rundown of the topics that I'd like to talk about today. So today is going to be all about rock bottom, all things rock bottom. So we're going to start at the very beginning. We're going to start at the very first step. And I feel like this rock bottom step or stage is something that everyone is familiar with, and especially those that have gone through the recovery stages. Even those that have not gone through through a recovery journey would know what rock bottom is. There are millions and millions of people that are stuck at this stage right now. Um, they feel like they have nowhere to go. They have no direction. They have no hope. And these are the things that I want to discuss in this podcast. I also wanted to talk about, well, actually, rock bottom is what I'm going to cover. I'm going to share with you my own experiences with rock bottom. I'm going to also give you my thoughts on why people wait till they get to rock bottom to do anything about their circumstances. And I'm also going to offer my own advice and solutions on what people should do that are at rock bottom. But before I jump into that, I just want to quickly go through a couple of things that I have learned and a couple of things that I've picked up from my first episode, my first podcast. I wanted to share these things with you, I guess, because this is all a learning process for me, and I want to bring you along this journey of the things of how I'm going, how I'm processing all of this, and also what I'm doing about it. And I'm pretty certain that I'm going to be fumbling myself through a lot of this before I can start to get a good feel for myself and what I'm going to say and how I want to speak about particular subjects and how I want to structure my thoughts. And these are things that I've never really thought too much about in the past. Even though I have had a lot of experience with public speaking, this forum is different, and it's a steep learning curve for me. So one thing I've learned from my first podcast is that I actually was going all over the place. So I didn't keep my thoughts together the way that I thought that I would. I did have some bullet points down here, but as soon as I opened my mouth, I basically went off the cuff and just went on and on and on. And I'm not sure I gave myself enough time to pause, to ponder my thoughts, and then redirect myself. It kind of just went from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. I'm not sure that's the best approach. I'm certain that there are a lot of podcasters out there that don't do that. And so I do like to listen to podcasts. I do listen to various podcasts every day. Doing a podcast on your own is very different to podcasts where you see the host and the host guest having conversations. So I'm the one that has to fill the space, that has to direct the conversation, and it's something I'm really not used to, because it's almost like I'm having this conversation with myself out loud. I do this a lot on my own in my own head, but I don't very often get the opportunity to do it out loud. So one thing I did do a lot was just I didn't allow myself some time to actually gather myself, and I feel like that's something I need to work on, to give myself opportunities to break, pause, take a breath, and then redirect myself. As a result of not staying together, I felt like one of the other things I was doing was using the word a lot. And I it's pretty cringy for me listening to myself say um like every 2 seconds. And it was because I wasn't good enough to keep my thoughts together. So I'm going to be more mindful of that. I want to stop using word fillers to fill in space. I want my words to be carefully selected, everything to be purposeful, so that the purpose of that will be for me to not waste your time or my own time. I do know that my audience is time poor. They Life is happening. They want to get to the point. They want me to get to the point so that they can get the little gems or whatever value they can out of it as soon as possible. So that's one thing I need to be mindful of and try to work towards, is just being succinct uh, with my speech, so that my words are purposeful and what I'm saying is meaningful, and people can understand me, and they can understand me clearly, and they don't have to wait too long for me to get to a punchline or to a point. So that was all pretty challenging for me to do just there. I would be interested to know how many times I say in this video. I hope it's not as many as it was the first time. Anything less than whatever it was the first time will be in my eyes, progress. So with all that being said, I want to just jump into rock bottom. And I want to start with sharing my own experience. When I was at rock bottom, I was single. I lived by myself in an apartment, uh, a bachelor pad. I didn't have much in it. Uh, it was it was very small, but it did the trick for me. I had overdue, outstanding bills. Everything that I had to pay for was outstanding. I was in the process of being evicted from my apartment. I had received multiple letters to be evicted from my place. I was able to beg them to not let me believed that I would somehow be able to come out with the funds to be able to keep myself there. My car was being repossessed at the same time as well. I was overdue on multiple payments. I had outstanding bills that I hadn't paid. I financially it was I was in ruin. The money that I did have, I tried to keep for my vices because I needed to carry myself from day to day, and I wanted to make sure that I had enough for that. It was provide for my vices first, and then it was sustenance to sustain myself, and then paying bills and so on. The mental state that I was in, I was very anxious. I That's why I smoked a lot of weed, because I was I had a lot of anxiety at the time. I didn't really want to face my reality. So I escaped it as often as I could, because if I had sat too long and thought about the circumstances that I was in, I would start the self loathing process and the beating myself up. And I was afraid of where that could take me, to depression, uh, to doing things that I shouldn't do, such as committing crimes, um, just doing things that I wouldn't normally do. So I wanted to stay out of my reality. I needed my drugs and alcohol to keep me out of my reality, and I needed it consistently. My spiritual state was shot. I didn't have any spirituality. I hadn't been to church in years. Praying, I don't think was a thing at the time, although I feel like I may have in my heart said prayers, but it was never a purposeful thing where I was kneeling at my bedside asking God for the things that I needed. There was no spirituality. I was not connected to God. I wasn't reading my scriptures. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't meeting with, I wasn't, there wasn't anyone in my circle of influence that was religious. So I didn't have anyone around me to encourage me or to help lead me towards the light or towards God. It was just non-existent at the time. So mentally and emotionally as well, I mean, I guess that anxiousness and anxiety and all of that comes down to emotion as well. My spirituality, my financial circumstances, all of that collectively was shot. But my mental state, I was there was hopelessness. There was only hopelessness. I felt like I was in an abyss and I was falling, and that the speed that I was falling was increasing and getting faster and faster, and that there was no way for this momentum to ever stop. I felt like even being at my rock bottom, people always said to me, "Oh, well, you know, the one thing about rock bottom is that you always know there's only one direction, and that's up." And I used to say that to other people, that the good thing about being at rock bottom is that there's only one direction, and it's up. But if you've ever felt in the pits of despair at your rock bottom, And if you've ever been at a rock bottom, you would know that there is a lot of space down there. And so it wasn't like you only have one direction and you turn around and go straight back up. It's like you get down to rock bottom, and then you can move to the left and you can move to the right, and there's a lot of room at rock bottom. So there wasn't just one direction which was up. It was like there was multiple directions, and they just went east and west. So it could go south, which is down, east, or and there was a lot of space on east to west. So if you were at your rock bottom, there was just, for me, it felt like there was a lot of space down there. And that there was more than just one direction at rock bottom, and none of those, the only one, that one direction of up was just one of many different options that you had at rock bottom. And so that was my experience at rock bottom. And it took for me to get to a point where I was lonely because I was single at the time. I didn't have a girlfriend. I lived a bachelor lifestyle for pretty much for many years. I'd had relationships in the past, but for the most part, I'd lived the bachelor life. And so I didn't have companionship. I didn't have a good, healthy, close connection with anybody. So I was single. I was in financial disarray. I was mentally and emotionally shot. I I I I was full of anxiety. I was full of negative emotions. And spiritually, that I had no spirituality in my life at that time. So pretty much on all fronts, it took for me to reach the bottom of each one of those aspects of my life before I said, okay, like if I don't stop doing what I'm doing now, I'm this I could lose my life. I could get into trouble with the law. I could do a lot of things. I had actually legitimately contemplated whether I should go out and break the law, like go out and rob a bank or do something crazy so that I could get caught. And then if I did get caught, then I would be locked up for a period of time. And during that period of time, that would buy me the window and the time that I would need to sober up, to be away from my networks and the influences, the negative influences that I had in my life at that time. And I felt if I had a period of time where I could just be away from all of that and I didn't have access to any of my vices, that would do the trick for me. And I do wonder how many people there are in this world that have been in the circumstances or situation that I'm in, that I was at the time. And I actually wonder if there are people now, and maybe you're one of them. Maybe you're watching this and you're going, I'm in this situation right now where I feel like I need to break the law in order for me to get myself right. And legitimately, that was an option that I thought was was going to be a good option. It would be better than where I was at the time. I had contemplated going to rehab, and rehab would just cost too much. I felt like I needed 24/7 care. I needed to be admitted into a rehab that I could be supported 24/7 for a period of time to be able to to get out of this situation and the circumstances that I was in. But I couldn't afford to do it. And so that was my rock bottom. And my out was to go to church. That was because I needed to go to someone. I needed to go somewhere, and I needed to start somewhere. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to quickly touch on why people wait. And I believe that the reason people wait to get to rock bottom before they do anything about anything is because it's not as bad. It's not as bad as it could be. They always I always knew that there was still I still had some space or some time. And I believe that addicts know that there is that they have time. They will know. Some won't. But a lot of addicts will know when they're at the worst part and they have to make a decision. But a lot of people never really get there because their standards just continue to drop. They get to us, they reach a certain level here, and then what they do is they make exceptions for where the lowest part can be. So for example, they might say, "Oh, I'll wait till I get my third warning from my real estate agent that I'm going to kicked out before I do anything." As opposed to saying, "Okay, the first one was bad enough." They would think, "Okay, I still have some time there. I still have a second warning I could get, a third warning, a fourth warning." I have a friend that I spent so much time with, and he was a lot younger than me at the time. And he watched me go through my journey, and he watched me go from that world into a new world, and then saw the person that I had become. And so for him, he looked at me and said, "Okay, you're 35 years old, or you were 35 when you made the decision to change. I'm only 28 now," or whatever the age may have been at the time when he said that to me. "I'm only 28 now, so I still actually have 7 years before I can make a decision to change." And then in that time frame, he had made a lot of poor decisions, some which had him end up in jail, going to jail and going to prison, and then getting strung out on certain drugs, and then losing his home, his relationships, with his straining relationships with his loved ones. Um, and so I guess people always believe that they have time. People always think, "Oh, I'm still young enough that I can still live this lifestyle, and then I'll fix this at a later stage." And I feel like that's why people wait to get to rock bottom before they make decisions. They always believe that they have time, and they can also believe that it's not them. It's not so bad. I'm not I'm not like the other people. I'm not like everybody else. And so there is no urgency. There's no urgency for them to want to change things because things aren't yet bad enough for them to make the decision. People will make decisions quicker when there's urgency. And if you're not being pushed out of your house, or to have your car removed, or for you, if you're not going to jail, if your marriage isn't broken up, then you're still okay. and there's still time. So people are motivated by situations that compel them to make the changes. Like me, I was forced to look in a different direction, to look for other options because I had run out of options. And I'm glad that I was compelled or even forced to look in another direction so that I could make that decision and go, because it's better than not making that decision in the first place. But I tell you, what is better than that is if I would have made that decision on my own without being compelled to do that. If I had just said, okay, looked at my circumstances, and without having to go into debt and having my car taken away or being kicked out of my house or losing my job, or you know all these other bills, outstanding bills, or people wanting to take things away from me, like instead of me having to wait to get to that point, if I had made a decision prior to that, years before that, to just say, hey, look, I can make I need to change what I'm doing because I can see where this is going to head. And most people can see where this is going to head if they continue to do what they're doing. There are, before they get to a point where they're not so coherent and can't string sentences together, and they can't think properly. They still have, they were at a stage in their life where they could make coherent decisions and they could think forward. They could see that the decisions that they were making were going to lead to down certain roads that weren't going to end up in the right places. And so, with all that being said, the one piece of advice that I would have to share with any of you right now that are at rock bottom, that are debating whether to make the decision or not to change, to make that commitment, the best thing that you can do is to make that commitment today. That is the best thing, and I'll give you three reasons why it's that the best thing for you to do is to make that decision now. One, it's less painful. Two, there's less life wasted. And three, there's less consequences to deal with in the future. Less painful. So I'll use my life story, my rock bottom story, to articulate these points here. Less painful meaning I could have avoided having to get kicked out or be on the verge of being kicked out, getting my car repossessed, losing my job, losing friends, all those other things that I could have avoided all of those things altogether had I made that decision to change years earlier. And because I didn't do that years earlier, I wasted a lot of my life. I didn't decide to make the change till I was 35 years old. So I would say from between 15 and 35 years old, there would be a 20-year span there where I just was going around in circles. I had no ambition, no direction. The only ambition I had was to live for the moment, to live a fast life, to live for the moment, to be out with my friends, to be closely connected to my networks, to live life to the fullest, like people would say. That was my only ambition. I have I have children now. I'm a father of two children. I have a 6-year old and I have a 14-month old. I got married when I was 37 years old. My first son I got at 42, and my second son I had when I was 47 years old. So I'm 48 years old now, And the one thing that I wish I had was more energy, to be honest, because kids are no joke. And I know all of these dads and these families, these parents that have children. I know you all know what I'm talking about. It's a lot of work. And the one thing that I regret is that I didn't have my family earlier, when I had more energy, more I was more vibrant, I was more motivated, perhaps had more testosterone. I just know that I it would have been good to have been closer in age to my children, but to also have lots of an abundance of energy that I could deal with all the daily stresses that come with being a parent of very active boys. And I love all the things that I have in my life now. I just wish I had had all of that sooner. And I feel like I have wasted 2 years of my life, or sorry, not 2 years, but 20 years of my life running around in circles. And the regret that I have is that I didn't spend that time wisely. And if I would have done what I'm doing with my life now 20 years ago, I mean, not even 20 years ago, even if it was, anyways, if it was in my early 20s when I started doing this, it just would have been or even mid 20s, or even when I turned 30, that would have even made a bit, that would have made a significant difference in my life. And the last point that I wanted to make about the reason why it's important for you to start now is so that you have less consequences to deal with in your future. And what I mean by that is, for me, I've been smoking cigarettes for quite some time. I didn't stop smoking cigarettes until the 29th of January 2013. That was about 11 years ago. And so it's been a while since I've smoked my last cigarette. However, I still wheeze in my lungs, and I still have problems with wheezing, and I still don't know whether my lungs are okay. I use a a puffer like Ventolin. It's called a Symbicort. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Symbicort, but that's something that I use now, not all the time, but just when am wheezing heavily in it, especially if I've caught a sickness or a virus. It really impacts my lungs, and I can really feel the pressure on my lungs, and I can feel I can hear myself and feel myself wheezing, and it's almost like every time I get sick, it's like I have bronchitis. And I know that a lot of that has to do with my history of smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, smoking whatever drugs I was smoking. I just had done it for so long that I know that it has damaged my lungs, and my lungs may be healthier now than they ever have been. Well, not than they ever have been, but they're healthier now than they would have been had I continued on that road. And who knows what would have happened or where I would be now if I was still smoking. It's been almost 13 years, sorry, 11 years now since I've not been smoking. Like if I was still smoking for 11 years, I might not even be here. But that's what I mean. You'd have less consequences to deal with in the future. So that's just one thing, like smoking. And for me and my lungs and my health moving forward, I just want to be able to breathe and to exercise and to run and not be weary, and to be able to have fun, to play sports, to play with my boys when they're growing up. I don't want to be one of those dads that's like, nah, you go ahead and go on without me. I don't want to be one of those kind of dads. And to me, that's a huge consequence for the choices that I made earlier in my life. Is if I couldn't play with my kids, that's just like, that's heartbreaking for me. that would be heartbreaking for me to not be able to join in the fun, to be able to kick a ball with my boys, to throw the ball to them, to watch them grow up. I want to be able to participate with them. I want to go on runs with them. I want to do a lot of things with them. And so that's what I mean. There'd be, if you make that decision today to change, you are going to have less pain in your life. You're going to have less life wasted, and you're going to have less consequences to deal with in the future. And so you might ask yourself, what is the best way to start? If I'm going to start today, how do I commit today to making that change? Well, that change is going to have to involve somebody else. And for me, it involved the bishop of the church that I go to, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I literally walked into the church, went into and found the bishop. I said, where's the bishop? Who's the guy that's in charge here? And singled him out and just said, I need to talk to you. And then I went and had, I don't know how long I had to how long I was in this office for, but that's how I got the ball rolling. You have to go to somebody else. You need to confide in somebody else. Someone else has to know about your decision to change. It can't be just you going in your heart or in your mind, okay, I'm going to make the change starting today. That's not going to be helpful because you won't be very good at doing that. You need support and you need help and you need somebody else to be able to help you to do that. So if you don't believe in a religion, or if you don't believe in a God, then that's okay. You can go to a therapist. You can go to um, an addiction recovery program. You can look them up online. You can go online and type out addiction recovery program for whatever, gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, and then you can find the one nearest you. There's usually a local center where they meet weekly to you'll have a community there of people to be able to, well, develop relationships with firstly, but to learn from, but to have people around you that are in the same situation. That's very comforting, because you know that there are also people that are in the same boat that you are in, that are looking for help, and you're in an environment where you have that help provided for you. So you can go to church, you can go to an addiction recovery program, you can go to a therapist, you can go to your parents, you can go to your mom or dad, but just tell somebody. You need to go to somebody, and that's the way that you start. And that would be my advice to you, is to start today, prolong it no more, change your life today, so that you change the trajectory of your future. You make that decision today, then you change the trajectory of your future today. And that is what I wanted to talk to you about today. That's what I wanted to share with you. That was on my heart. I wanted to talk to you about rock bottom. I wanted to talk to you, for those of you who are at rock bottom, and I want to tell you that there is hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel, that this isn't the end for you, that it may look and appear that way, but this is not the end. You still got air in your lungs. You can still make a different decision today, and you can start that journey, and it will it will make the it will make all the difference in your life moving forward. So I wish all of you luck out there. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to me on my socials. There will be there are links in my bio. There'll be a link somewhere on my stories and reels that you guys can connect with me with. But if not me, reach out to someone. You don't need to stay where you're at. There is help. There is hope. There is a life worth living out there, even if it does not look like that for you. Trust me, I did not think that I was gonna be able to have the life that I have now. I couldn't have pictured it ever happening to me because all I could see was a black hole that I was falling faster and faster into. And now I cannot explain to you or put into words the joy that I have experienced in my life because of the decision that I made to change. And so I encourage you all to make that same decision also.